We had some really outstanding nurses at Lincoln, and those just represent some of those. In the first picture, we have one of our nurses, Robin. Robin was the only Caucasian nurse on campus in our school, but that was in the late 60s. Joan Martin, some of you may know Joan Miller. She had like 5 names, but that was Joan Martin. She wanted those names. Joan passed recently, well, the past year, because she was known, she wanted the students to be able to recognize her in terms of her different roles that she played. The next person is Miss Thorpe, Ms. Elizabeth Thorpe, who was, Ms. Thorpe was OB supervisor, OB instructor, and there are those from this area may know her. Miss Miles, oh, it's sitting right there, all right? Miss Miles, raise your hand, that's Miss Miles. Miss Miles did a variety of things. Miss Armstrong is the next person, and Miss Armstrong passed recently. She was 97 years old, I think, when she passed. Then we have Miss Thicke Jones. I think that's Miss Jones. Miss Jones was not a Lincoln grad, but she worked in the outpatient department. She was there a long time with all of us. And then Miss Miller, Miss Leela Miller, who was in charge of the operating room. And she taught all of us OR technique. Then there are some others. Ms. Thompson, who was not a Lincoln nurse, Lincoln grad, but she worked at Lincoln. We have the person who, Ms. Walker, who was one of the instructors. She taught pediatrics. And then in the next picture you have Ms. Joyce Rowland, who actually wrote the foreword to this book. We have Sylvia Richardson, who currently lives in Durham, and who was assistant director of nursing at Lincoln for a few years. And you have Miss Manice Banks. Miss Banks was a nurse and ops instructor. Then you have Lois Thorpe. You might know Lois Thorpe. Helen Webb. Miss Webb was a supervisor at the end at NCCU of the infirmary. And then Miss Crockett. Miss Crockett was an assistant director of nursing at Lincoln. So those ladies, they were our teachers, they were our supervisors, they were our friends, they were our enemies. But they were all trying to keep us straight, and they all helped us to be successful. Now, okay. The next slide then is, this is a pennant. Milestones in nursing. Milestones were, number one, being admitted, because not everyone was admitted. Okay? So being admitted was the first milestone. The second milestone was the preclinical time. If you made it through the preclinical time, then you were on your way to being a nurse. So people, there was a lot of attrition, as I said earlier. The attrition was because of grades, because the standards at Lincoln were very high. They were very high. So if you made it, but other people left because they wanted to go back home. Somebody wanted to get married, because you could not be married and be a nurse at Lincoln. And in general, that was at the times you couldn't be married in nursing school. So if you made it through that period, and that period lasted sometimes between 2 months and 9 months through the course of a school. So that was a momentous day when you had completed that preclinical, and in your uniform, you were capped. Okay? We have a poem about the capping, and the nurses received the lamp. It was a beautiful ceremony. They were done at different churches in the community. I received mine at Covenant Presbyterian Church. That's down below Lincoln Community Health Center now. Now, it was hard, and we said people did go home. And this person in this one, she allowed us to use her grades. I guess you may not can see those, but anyway. The grading system was so high, like an 80 was not passing for us. So Esther, Dorothy Esther Seegers, was beginning to fail. And so Sylvia Richardson was the assistant director of nursing for education. So she wrote a letter home to Esther's parents and said, you know, she was about to be on probation for her grades. So Esther's mother told Esther, look, you better get it together, okay? Esther played a lot of cards, and most people went to Lincoln and learned how to play cards. I don't know if there were any nurses who did not learn how to play cards at Lincoln. So Esther said what she did was She went upstairs and kept on playing cards. But she made it. She made it. She passed. Now she's successful. She's retired now. But she passed the board the first time. So she was okay with that. She was all right. Now, student activities. Students at Lincoln, we lived through World War I, World War II, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Vietnam War. So, many nurses, World War II, were able to join the nurse cadet program. So these are some of the nurses who joined the nurse cadet program. Now the cadet program, it provided their tuition, it provided a uniform, and it gave them a stipend for as long as they were there. And of course, they had to serve in segregated camps because we're still in the day of segregation. Now, other activities that students were involved in. This is a picture of an honor society. We have honor societies like honor societies in colleges. The honor society began in the 60s, as well as there were other student nurse organizations. So this is a picture capturing an induction ceremony of students who were inducted to the honor society. And there were a number inducted. I was disappointed that I didn't make the honor society, so but that's okay. Now, there were other social and recreational activities. This is the way we went to church, and I heard someone talking earlier, I think it was Joanne, maybe, that when you went to church, you had to dress up. But when you went to town, we had to dress up going to town as well as going to church. So this is the way the students looked when they went to church. Hats, gloves, and the heels, of course. And because nursing was so hard, we prayed a lot. We had to pray to make it. And most of us came to Lincoln from backgrounds where it was deeply religious. So we knew about faith, we knew about prayer. So this just captured that. Now, we also had to sing. We had a choir. There are those who couldn't really carry a tune, but it didn't matter. It was mandatory to participate in the choir. So one of the favorable things that we would always do, we would have choral communions at Duke at Christmas time. Lincoln nurses, Watts School of Nursing, and Duke nurses, we'd get together and we would have choral communions. So someone sent me a copy of the program, so I was glad to get that. Okay? And we played basketball. Some of you may remember the Shades of Beauty College, Durham Business College. All right, we played them, and we actually did win a game. Not too good, we did win a game. And how many of you ever wrapped the maypole? Okay. That was a favorite. All right. And our lawn was absolutely gorgeous. So anything you did on the lawn was beautiful. Now, we also had queens and proms and coronations. And there we have Miss Pointer in the center of the left, who was a queen in 1958, and we have Miss Lois Mars, who was in 1934. So they went back, no, she was not 1934, but actually started having queens in 1934. Another person was in 1934, so, but she was in the 40s, I think. And then, of course, the alumni has at points kept that, maintained that tradition. So here we have the alumni who was crowned Miss Lincoln, Miss Vintage Lincoln. Ethering Hennessy. Some of you may know the name Bill Hennessy. Bill Hennessy was a radio broadcaster in the area some time ago. Sorry, husband. Now, proms, the juniors always gave the prom to the seniors. So this was a prom of 1943. Like us today? Different? Okay. Now, a favorite pastime of mine was the tea. Many of us came from the country, and many of us didn't have a lot of social graces and so forth, okay? So Miss Z wanted us to be ladylike, professional, be able to carry on conversation, know, the proper etiquette. So we had Sunday evening teas. We'd have to go down to the parlor with our gloves, our heels, and so forth. and entertain each other and talk. Now, and it's interesting, let me go back. There's something I want to read, because one of the persons who talked about the T's, actually, she talked about the value of Lincoln in her story, because the stories gave the value of Lincoln and what they learned from there. So let me tell you how she did this. She said, upon entering Lincoln, I experienced a culture shock. Lincoln served two purposes, one being for my formal education in nursing and the other being as a charm school. I remember having to dress up in a black dress and wearing white gloves for an afternoon tea to formally meet my classmates and some of the faculty. We were taught proper etiquette, manners, and dress. The classes and clinical schedule were intense. I remember my classmates and I walking down Federal Street at 7 a.m. on cold mornings to North Carolina College, now North Carolina Central University, by a chemistry class with Professor Macmillan. So she talks about what Lincoln did for her, how it influenced her. Now, the next person who was influential with us is Dr. Rose Butler Brown. Those of you from Durham may know Dr. Rose Butler Brown. Dr. Brown, she came, and Miss Williams, she was a friend of Miss Williams, and Miss Williams wanted us to know about those professional behaviors. So she came and talked with us from time to time. Now, this is a picture of an affiliation, an integrated affiliation. There were not the patient load at Lincoln to meet all the requirements from the Board of Nursing, specifically in psych and pediatrics. So for those areas, we had to go away for affiliations. And this is an affiliation group in Kentucky. And who's the person who went to that affiliation? Ashley Blue over there, and Miss Baldwin. They went to Kentucky for that affiliation. And this is interesting because there's a statement that Miss Blue made in her story. And perhaps Miss Blue, you share with us what it was about the hair.
Well, at that time, we were not familiar with the behaviors of other races other than us. And of course, we, at that time, used the hot combs and pressed our hair. And the white students were really fascinated to see how we fried our hair. And we were, in turn, fascinated to see how they put Jell-O on theirs. And made it stiff, and they could form any kind of style that you wanted to with the Jell-O. So that was an interesting cultural education.
Thank you, Ms. Blue. All right. Now, for some of us, that affiliation was the first time away from home. For some, it was the first time on a train ride. Some even had airplanes, first time flying an airplane. For me, we went to Crownsville, Maryland, and we would go to D.C. on the weekends, and I learned to skate a little bit, but I stayed on the floor for the most part. So, but that was my first experience in terms of trying to skate. We also went to the beaches and so forth because many of us just had not had those kind of opportunities to do that. So being on the affiliation was stretching our wings. Stretching our wings. Now, some other really outstanding nurses. The first picture there is of Miss Lyons. Miss Lyons entered Lincoln in 1918. Had an opportunity to discuss with her before she passed. The first project that Ruby and I did, we interviewed Miss Lyons. And she talked to us about what the admission standards were. And that really she needed to be healthy, be physically fit, mentally fit, and have a desire to be a nurse. Now she left Lincoln after perhaps a year, and she worked down to she had gone to North Carolina College, Chautauqua is what NCC was, called Chautauqua. And she had studied there, and then she went to Monrovia, Liberia, for the Lock Carey mission. So she was a missionary for a number of years, and she taught there. But then she decided that she really needed more education to be able to take care of the patients there. So she came back to Lincoln, and she graduated in 1929. The person in the uniform is Della Rainey Jackson, who was the first Negro nurse in the armed services. It wasn't easy, 1940, but she was the first. She is featured in Contemporary Minority Nurses, a book that was written by Helen Miller and I think James Edwards. The next person many of you might recognize is Miss Lyda Best. Miss Lyda Best, a Lincoln graduate, and Miss Lyda Best was the first Negro supervisor at the Durham County Health Department, okay, for many years. The next person is Miss Elder. Miss Elder was an outstanding nurse, and Miss Elder was an activist, and she has a park that's named for her. I think it's in Wilmington. And the person in the center is Elaine Richardson Smith, who was my classmate, and she's the most brilliant person I've ever known. So she's just there because of it. She clearly had some accomplishments, but she was just really brilliant. And then the other person is Janie Canty. Janie Canty Mitchell. No, it's not Miss Mitchell. What's her name? That is Janie. Oh, okay. All right, Janie is there because Janie did not pass the test, entrance exam, when she came to apply to Lincoln. And at that point, they had started doing the admission testing in the late 50s, in the mid-50s. So Janie did not pass, she came in the 60s. But they accepted her on probation. And when she finished, she had the highest average in the class and became very, very very, very accomplished. So, Lincoln was about, as many of our institutions are, about giving chances, okay? Giving opportunities to people who have the ability, but people who have, as we said, been stymied and impoverished because of what the educational systems were. Most of us came from those educational systems where the books were secondhand, so she's there because of that. And she actually, I think, was the first maybe African-American person to graduate from the School of Anesthesia in Winston-Salem. And there are some other outstanding ladies. Miss Patricia Blue, Mary Baldwin. When Lincoln Hospital closed, merged with Durham Regional, and we had the beginning of the Lincoln Community Health Center, these ladies served as directors of nursing for that facility for a number of years, quite a few years between them, and they were outstanding in that role. You have Miss Clara Harris. Some of you might know Clara Harris. Miss Harris was a Durhamite, and she worked in doctor's office, I think it was Dr. King's office, for many, many years. And we named her Dr. Randolph. Okay. She worked in the office for many years, was a wonderful woman, and she was the treasurer of our organization for probably close to 40 years. So we named her the Nurse of the Century, and she had that award. She really didn't want to go to nursing school. She wanted to be a doctor, is what she told me. But she was too young, so she came to Lincoln. Her mother, her grandmother, someone in her family told her she was coming to Lincoln. They packed her up, and she had no choice. So that's why she came to Lincoln. And then Miss Miles, that's Miss Miles. Miss Miles is the community volunteer extraordinaire. Miss Miles has won numerous awards for her work in the community. And she was awarded the Longleaf Pine, which we know is an outstanding award from the governor of North Carolina. So Miss Miles, okay, thank you. Now, there are lots of other ladies who didn't respond, but who could have the same kind of story, same kinds of accomplishments as these ladies had. Now, when the school closed, the Alumni Association, we determined that we were going to stay together. The Alumni Association probably started like 1937, 38, the best that we can recover. So when the school closed in 71, the goal was that we would meet every 2 years and have a reunion. And when he started, there were 3 alumni groups in New York, DC, and in Durham. Now we only have one. We collapsed and become one group. So this is a picture of the 1985 reunion. And this is important because we have at least 5 or 6 of our alumni sisters who are no longer with us. So, okay. The alumni also have been active in other kinds of activities. In 1998, I think, we went on a trip to Africa, and we did a nursing seminar there. And there are some of the people who participated in that nursing seminar. And that's one of our nights out on the town, as we're dressed in African garb. Now, we'll talking about preservation of Lincoln Hospital School of Nursing. The book was written to document about Lincoln. Because you ask the average person, 50 or less, they would not have heard about Lincoln Hospital School of Nursing. They now may know about Lincoln Community Health Center, but they wouldn't know about Lincoln. So the goal was to document that for posterity, or in perpetuity, as our friend, our Preservation Society chairperson calls it. The Preservation Society chairperson is Carolyn Henderson. Okay. So one of the things, in addition to the book, this came before the book, we have a monument on the grounds of Old Lincoln Hospital. The nurses' lamp, and around the base of that monument are bricks that were bought by individuals, alumni of the program, people in the community, and they would always be there to say Lincoln Hospital was here. And because of our connection with NCCU, the nurses participating in the unveiling were students there. And one of our alumnus made the uniforms to replicate what the uniforms were from the beginning, the uniforms and the nursing caps. Now, there's a poster over there that has the nursing caps and so forth, so you can see those, and put those in the slide. And on that day, we had not only NCCU participate, but we had our community officials, county commissioners, city people who were there to participate. Dr. Smith, who is the executive director, who was of Lincoln Community Health Center. Mayor Clement, who was pro tem. We had Evelyn Wicker, who was one of the county commissioners. And we had a minister and another person, sorry. And Gloria King. I want to give recognition to Gloria King because Gloria King was very instrumental in making sure that that occurred. Then we also have, again, our connection with NCCU. To maintain the heritage, we also have what we call Lincoln Scholars. There's an endowment that was put together, and Gloria helped to really guide that process. So we have Lincoln Scholars. They have to have a certain grade point average and so forth. And so they are sponsored financially by money, the interest from the endowment. And that picture, this happened when Dr. Emmons was the chancellor at NCCU, and Lorna Harris was the director of nursing. And of course, you see Carol Henderson there, and Gloria King. Now, we also have a connection with NCCU. We are maintaining, we have an agreement with NCCU to maintain the archives from Lincoln Hospital School of Nursing. So this agreement was signed November 12th, 2012 at Lincoln Community Health Center. So we have Andre Van, who's an archivist at NCCU, and Dr. Theodosia Shields, who is the director of the library with Carolyn and with Mayor Baldwin, participating in that. And we also had other Lincolnites who were there to sign the agreement. Now, that's the bust of Angela B. Duke. So, I said it sat on the, it sat in the foyer, on the break front, in the nursing school. When the nursing school closed, something happened to it. Something happened to it, like something happened to most of the materials and so forth that were there. So the persons in the picture, that's Peggy Walters, who was the director of nursing at Watts, and Donna Rogers, who's an archivist at the Watts School of Nursing. They found the bus somewhere, flea market or yard sale or something, I think. At a what shop? Antique shop, okay. So they retrieved it, and they re-gifted it to us in November of 2012 at the same ceremony. So we were pleased to get that back. And it is now at NCCU. And we don't know whether it's going to be in the School of Nursing or not, but it's at NCCU. And there we have the Duke connection. From the beginning, it was the Duke family that was involved with us heavily. Throughout the course of the institution, the hospital and the School of Nursing, the Duke family gave lots of money and made lots of support to us. So it was at that same ceremony that we had Miss Mary Biddle Duke, Mary Duke Biddle Trent Siemens present. Thank you. Okay. She was present, let's get it right. And that was probably one of the last official things she did, because this is in November, and I think she died in December. And she said to me, my mother would be so proud of this ceremony. So we were very pleased to have that. In addition to that, we had Mr. Larry Suk there, who was the last administrator of Lincoln Hospital before it moved, before it merged. And we also had Dr. Zhao and his wife from Duke to participate in that. Okay. Now, that is our oldest living graduate, and I just love her to death. She is 105 now, and she will be 106 if she is living, Lord willing, August of 2014. She'll be 106 years old. We visited her last year, and she actually prepared a meal for us. All right? She prepared a meal. She cooked it herself. And we'd already had breakfast, but we had to eat. You know, somebody 105 will cook you a meal, you must eat it, right? You must be polite, so we did that. And of course, that's my granddaughter. That's my granddaughter. And in the back is Lottie Bogan, who was the president, who is still the president of our Alumni Association. It's Lottie, okay? And Lottie gave her a plaque. Okay. Now, some might say this is our Nightingale Pledge. Someone told me they were in some kind of service when the Nightingale Pledge is different. This is not what I'm aware of. This is a Nightingale Pledge that we all had to say when we graduated. We had to learn the pledge. Now, what I see today is they either repeat it behind someone or they read it. That's kind of disgusting to me, but I'm an old-time person, okay? But we had to learn the pledge, and it was so meaningful. It was sacred. Now, someone would say, all right, why did Lincoln close? Lincoln and Watts were about the same time. Watts is still going on strong, but Lincoln closed. That was a confluence of issues, of forces that together, I think, brought the issue to light that we had to close. Finances, Lincoln was always underfinanced. We didn't have enough patients. Our building was old. Even though in 1953 we had, you know, a new building or some modification to the building that existed from 1924. The patient census wasn't what it needed to be for the nursing school. We were having problems with the Board of Nursing. The Board of Nursing says they grade schools, evaluate schools of nursing based on first-time passing. And we had some issues with first-time passing. We felt that because we gave chances and people became successful, that perhaps we should have more time. But it was argued, but it didn't happen. So in 1968, Carolyn entered the last class for Lincoln. And that's kind of what happened. After that, you know what happened with Lincoln Community Health Center, the merger with Durham Regional, and all. And as I said, those ladies participated as directors with Lincoln Community Health Center. And there are those who are still working now at Duke, Durham Regional. What is it now? Duke Regional. Okay, so there are still probably some Lincoln graduates who are there working. And most of us have retired, but we are still volunteering and doing things. I work part-time as a nursing instructor at Wake Tech Community College, teaching CNAs. And my goal is to try to impart to them some of the values that I have. The values about quality, about discipline, about focus, all those things that are important for being successful. This is what the Lincoln nurses were all about. We have a sisterhood, a bond that has kept us together. We're working on that bond now because many of us are passing on. There are not a lot of us to continue the work, but those things that we have talked about, the preservation of our archives, the book, the monument, downtown at the train station, there's a mural of Lincoln nurses. So those are the things that we're trying to do to preserve the legacy of Lincoln Hospital School of Nursing, because we are good nurses. If you hear someone say a Lincoln nurse, there are certain images that come to fore. So I thank you for listening. Thank you guys for sharing. And if there are questions that you have, I'll be glad to respond. Yes.
I do have one question. I was just puzzled about the affiliations. When you talked about the affiliations for the psychiatric and pediatric training, I was kind of shocked to see that they weren't in North Carolina and that they were still in the South. What was the logic behind people having to go to Kentucky or Maryland? I just didn't
The logic was that there are places that did not accept us because of segregation.
Still.
Yes.
And it was still, okay.
Yes.
Now, we did do one affiliation in North Carolina. My class in 1969 had the pleasure of going all the way to Butler. But we did our pediatric affiliation in St. Vincent's Hospital in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Okay.
Back was riding motorcycles in Cincinnati, guys, we had a great time. And the class of 1968 did their pediatric affiliation in Philadelphia Children's Hospital. And I met relatives there. When I told my family that I was going to be going there, they told me about families that I had met. And so just about every other weekend, I had an aunt and I had a first cousin. So every other weekend, I would go with one or the other. And one of them was younger, and she told me, you can do it. You can ride the train, because she didn't drive. And I never rode, the subway. And I said, I don't think I can do that. And she said, yes, you can, because you're a Harold, you're a Hoffler. So I went, and I thought, now how am I going to know her? And she said, you know me. So when I got off, I had to ride the bus, then I had to get on the train in Philadelphia. Had never been there before. And when I got off, I thought, I don't know this lady. I don't see her. And she came right to me. I said, how did you know me? She said, because you got a coat in the dead summertime. I had my raincoat in my hand. That's the case.
The class of 1966 and their pediatric affiliation at L. Richardson in Greensboro.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, the opening of nursing school at NCCU had anything to do with closing Lincoln?
I don't think it had anything to do with closing Lincoln, no, because that school was in the beginning, the public health department, but this program became a bachelor's of nursing program as a generic program. So there are differences there. Now, there were some suggestions, these were some thoughts about Lincoln combining with Watts. Could Lincoln combine with Watts? Or could Lincoln combine with NCCU? But those suggestions, those discussions didn't really go anywhere. But I don't think it had anything to do. But now, many of us have been involved with NCCU. Actually, a number in his room actually worked there as part of the nursing department. Many of us went there to get our Bachelor's of Science degrees. And some have gone there to get their master's degrees, not in nursing, but in other areas. So again, since 1930, when we started taking classes there, we've been involved in NCCU. Yes.
I'm a volunteer at the new Museum of Durham History, and recently we had an exhibit of the healthcare history of Durham, including the Watts Hospital, the Lincoln Hospital, and the Duke University Hospital systems. It is no longer up, but I understand that there are some possible sites where
pleasure of being mentored by Dr. Wicker throughout my career. But I just want to say that I think this is just wonderful. I just started recently reading the book, and it's just such a rich and compelling history of Lincoln nurses and all that you guys have endured and overcome. And I think for those of us who came later, those of us who entered the profession of nursing later, you have really paved the path for us, all of you guys, and it's just been wonderful. I mean, I think we're really fortunate to even, be mentored and interact with you guys in any way. But my question is, do you envision expounding on the book in any way, like continuing some of the...
That brought a tear to my eye. No.
Such rich information.
There's probably lots of information out there. Someone just needs to have the fortitude, the tenacity. It's a very tedious process. If you guys have ever written books, it's a tedious process. It's not to be taken lightly or lightheartedly. So, but there are lots of areas that really could be researched. I mean, there are right areas for graduate students to look at. They really are. And most of the Lincoln nurses are, probably the youngest Lincoln nurse I want to say is maybe 65. So I don't know how much, energy they have or how much enthusiasm they have about moving forward with this. But it would be really a wonderful thing. Yes.
It might be interesting to see if people would agree to be recorded, to just do audio things for the Durham Museum. Because sometimes they have set up so people can go there and do oral histories. And this is so precious. We have got to get this saved for posterity.
There is a story room at the Durham History Museum, and all you need to do is call and let the director Katie know, and Spencer know when you wish to come. And there's usually someone there, a volunteer, or someone else, Katie herself, who will show you how to make a recording. Currently, students from Lyons High School, that is their project, finding a person that they are interested in interviewing. And when I was there last Wednesday, there were two young men who came in with a woman who was going to talk about her experiences in Durham. And so you don't have to have, you don't have to give much time. In fact, it's done on your time. You can call. You can go by yourself if you want to, if you don't want to be interviewed, but just want to record, you can go by yourself.
Thank you. My last statement would be that the purpose of this book was to document that we were here and what our accomplishments were, what Lincoln Hospital was all about in the School of Nursing. It was to be inspirational, it was to be motivational and informative. And I think it has accomplished that goal. So,
I just want to say one more thing. Doing your research and all the things that have gone on with Lincoln, there's a Reverend Alfonso Jackson that's in Durham that was born in Lincoln, adopted in Lincoln, and has a big interest in Lincoln, has done some research. In fact, he came out to my house a few months ago and brought me the old street map because he had taken the time to research exactly where the Zola Street was and the old Lincoln Hospital. And from what he has researched, University Ford sits on the spot that the old Lincoln Hospital was. So,
thank you, because it's been difficult trying to look at a map, the way the city has been, revitalized and all the changes. So, okay. Great. Okay. Well, thank you. I'll be pleased to now, if you want to purchase some books, the softback is $25 and the hardback is $35. We can take cash, check, or we have Square D that she knows how to work.
And we would like all the alumni to take a flower on their way out. I hope I have enough for everybody. And we really appreciate you coming and sharing your stories with us. Let's give Dr. Wicker one more hand for this wonderful program.